My friend's aunt found me alone at the party, then whispered, "Come to my room, alone." The first thing I noticed was the open staff door. It should have been locked. A marble urn had been shoved against the bottom edge to keep it from closing, letting thin winter air slide into the hallway behind the ballroom. The string quartet was playing somewhere beyond the archway, polished and perfect, but that cold draft cut straight through the music. I stood near the edge of the grand living room with a glass of sparkling water in my hand, watching guests move under chandeliers while my eyes kept returning to that door. Someone had treated a $1 million estate like a public train station. Nathan had promised me the evening would be harmless. Decent food, a few people worth meeting, and his aunt's famous holiday party at the Morgan estate. He had said I needed to stop spending every weekend buried in security audits and pretending my apartment counted as a social life. I had agreed because Nathan was one of the few friends who had earned the right to drag me somewhere against my better judgment. But 30 minutes inside the estate, my better judgment was already taking notes. The west hallway camera was angled too high, leaving a blind strip between the powder room and the staff stairs. The guest Wi-Fi password was printed on elegant little cards near the bar. 2 caterers were sharing one access badge. And that staff door, still held open by the urn, led straight toward the service corridor that wrapped behind the private wing. I set my glass down on a side table and moved 2 steps closer to the archway. That was when I saw Elena Morgan. Nathan's aunt did not look like a woman hosting a successful holiday gathering. She looked like a woman keeping a fire contained with both hands while smiling for the room. She moved through the crowd in a dark evening dress and a tailored winter shawl. Elegant enough for the gala, but practical enough for someone crossing a crisis at speed. Her long, dark hair rested over one shoulder. Her smile appeared exactly when it needed to, and disappeared the second no one was looking. Board members stopped her. Investors leaned in. A local politician laughed too loudly at something she clearly had not found amusing. Then her gaze cut across the room and landed on me. I had never met Elena properly before that night. Nathan had pointed her out once from a distance and described her with a mix of admiration and fear. CEO of Morgan Logistics, built the European expansion almost from nothing, remembered birthdays, destroyed weak arguments, never wasted a sentence. Right now, she was not looking for small talk. She broke away from 2 men in tuxedos and crossed the ballroom without rushing enough to draw attention. When she stopped beside me, the scent of pine, winter air, and expensive candle wax seemed to sharpen around us. "Julian Miller?" she asked quietly. "Yes." "My nephew said you handle corporate security, digital and physical." "I do." Her fingers closed once around the stem of the empty champagne flute in her hand. Not fear. Control under pressure. "I need your help upstairs," she said, her voice low enough that the nearest waiter passed without glancing over. "No one can see this." That was all she gave me. It was enough. I looked past her shoulder. Owen Parker stood near the far end of the ballroom. Morgan Logistics' Chief Operations Officer, if Nathan's earlier introductions had been accurate. He was speaking to a board member beside the fireplace. But his eyes were not on the board member. They were on Elena. Then they flicked to me. A second later, his smile returned. I turned slightly toward Elena, keeping my voice level. "Is there an active threat?" "Someone accessed my private study 40 minutes ago," she said. "My terminal is open. There's a message on the screen." "What kind of message?" "The kind meant to make me resign before the board meeting next week." The music swelled in the ballroom, sweet and bright. Around us, guests laughed, glasses chimed, and someone near the Christmas tree applauded a story I could not hear. Elena did not blink. "If those files reach the board tonight," she continued, "Owen can force an emergency vote before I have the final recovery report ready. If I call the police first, the existence of the breach becomes public record. If I call internal security, half the team reports to him, and if I leave this party visibly shaken, the board will know something is wrong before I can control the damage." There it was. Why she was trapped, what the opposing side wanted, why I was suddenly involved. I was not her friend. Yet, I was not her savior. I was the only person in that room with no stake in Morgan Logistics, no loyalty to Owen Parker, and enough training to preserve evidence before panic destroyed it. I looked toward the staff corridor again. The marble urn still held the door open. "Give me 10 seconds after you walk away," I said. "Take the main stairs. I'll use the service route." Her eyes studied mine for one beat longer than necessary, searching for hesitation or ego. She found neither. "Second floor," she said. "East wing, last door." Then she stepped away, smiled at an investor as if nothing in the world had shifted, and vanished into the crowd. I counted to 10. At 8, Owen glanced toward the stairs. At 10, I moved. The service corridor was colder than the ballroom and smelled faintly of lemon polish and outside air. I passed the prop staff door, nudged the urn away with my foot, and let the door click shut behind me. The sound was small, but it mattered. A boundary restored. The staff stairs were narrow, carpeted, and empty. Halfway up, I paused and looked over the railing. Below, a server hurried past with a tray of champagne. No one followed. On the second floor, the noise of the party became a muffled pulse beneath the floorboards. I found the east wing exactly where Elena had said it would be. The last door stood slightly open. Inside, her study was lit only by the cold blue glow of a computer monitor. Elena stood near the desk, arms folded tightly, her posture straight enough to fool anyone who did not know what fear looked like when it had been trained into discipline. "Close the door," she said. I did. The latch settled with a heavy brass click. The room smelled of polished wood, old paper, and the faint electrical heat of a machine left running too long. I stayed near the door. "Before I touch anything, I need your explicit permission to inspect the terminal and preserve evidence." She nodded once. "You have it. Verbal is a start. Written is better." A flicker of surprise crossed her face. Then, something like approval. "There's a notepad in the drawer." I pulled a pair of nitrile gloves from the inside pocket of my jacket. Her eyes dropped to them. "You brought gloves to a holiday party?" she asked. "I've been invited to worse parties." For the first time that evening, the corner of her mouth moved. Not quite a smile, but close enough to change the temperature of the room. I opened the drawer with 2 fingers, found the notepad, and set it in front of her with a pen. "Write that you authorize me to isolate and inspect the terminal, external access logs, and connected devices for the purpose of evidence preservation. Sign and date it." She did not argue. Her handwriting was sharp, fast, and controlled. Only at the bottom, where her signature crossed the page, did the pen tremble. While she wrote, I studied the study. The private office was beautiful in the way old money liked to pretend it had never noticed itself. Mahogany shelves, leather chairs, framed shipping maps, a window overlooking snow-dusted gardens. On one shelf behind the desk, a row of old legal volumes sat a fraction of an inch out of line. Too neat everywhere else, slightly wrong there. I marked it in my head and turned to the monitor. The terminal displayed one open text file. Resigned by the 15th, or the board sees the real numbers. Below it, a file transfer window had been minimized but not closed. Sloppy. Or arrogant. "Don't touch the keyboard yet," I said. Elena handed me the signed page. "The files?" "I'm checking." I inserted an encrypted forensic drive into the terminal and began imaging the active state before changing anything. The blue monitor light reflected against the glass surface of the desk. Downstairs, laughter rose and faded like a wave hitting stone. "What are the real numbers?" I asked. Her arms tightened around herself. Temporary losses tied to our European route restructuring. Not fraud, not hidden debt. A controlled dip while we move cargo through a new port network. The final report explains the recovery timeline, but the raw ledgers look bad without context. And Owen knows that. "He designed part of the first route model," she said. "When I rejected his cost-cutting plan, he started telling board members I was becoming emotional about legacy decisions." I kept my eyes on the screen. "He wants your chair." He wants control before the new contracts land. If the board sees only the unredacted Q4 ledger, he could make me look reckless. If the financial press gets it, even briefly, investors panic. By morning, my own board asked me to step aside for the good of the company. The file image completed. I disconnected the Wi-Fi, locked the network adapter, and opened the event logs. A USB device had mounted at 8:14 p.m. Mass copy began at 8:16. Disconnected at 8:22. 6 minutes. Long enough to steal, short enough to slip back downstairs with a drink in hand. Who has the bypass code for this study? I asked. Myself, Vivian, my executive assistant, Owen. Anyone else? Nathan knows where the room is. Not the code. He's at the party because I asked him to keep the younger guests occupied and away from the private wing. That explained Nathan's absence. It also meant Elena had already been worried before I arrived. I turned slightly toward her. Why didn't you cancel the party? Because canceling would tell the board there was a reason to worry. Owen pushed aggressively for this gathering. He wanted as many directors in my house as possible before the audit. A clean trap, public pressure, private breach, controlled leak. I opened the USB artifact record. The device left a serial number and transfer artifacts. Whoever did this did not expect a real forensic review. Can you prove who used it? Not from this terminal alone. I glanced at the shelf behind the desk, but I have a second concern. Elena followed my gaze. What? The legal books behind you, were they already uneven? She turned. Her face changed before she spoke. No. I walked to the shelf, slow and careful, and angled my phone flashlight between the volumes. Something black sat wedged behind a copy of a Maritime Law Digest. A smartphone, camera lens facing the desk. Elena made no sound. But the room seemed to lose air. I did not touch it. Instead, I photographed its position, the shelf, the desk, the screen, and the window reflection behind it. He planted the camera, she said. He wanted footage of your reaction. I stepped back. Maybe footage of whoever you brought in to help. Her gaze moved from the phone to me. Then you're in this now. I was in this the moment I closed the staff door. Her shoulders lowered a fraction, not in surrender, but in the tiny release that comes when someone else finally sees the same battlefield. What happens next? She asked. First, we preserve everything. Second, you go back downstairs before anyone notices too long an absence. Third, you do not confront Owen tonight. If he thinks we found less than we did, he'll make another move. And you? I'll stay here long enough to secure the image and device record. Then I leave the way I came in. She looked toward the door, then back at me. Julian. I paused. I'm trusting you with my company. No, I said gently. You're trusting me with evidence. Keep the company in your hands. That time, she did smile. It was brief. Tired, real. Then she lifted her chin, became Elena Morgan again, and returned to the party. The next morning, Morgan Logistics headquarters stood against a gray winter sky like a block of glass and steel cut from the weather itself. I arrived before sunrise. Elena was already in the lobby with 2 paper cups of black coffee and a sealed folder under one arm. She handed me 1 cup. No sugar, she said. Nathan told me you drink coffee like a punishment. He has a gift for making accurate things sound insulting. A small laugh escaped her before she could stop it. It echoed once in the marble lobby and disappeared into the hum of the building waking up. That laugh mattered more than it should have. We rode the private elevator to the executive floor. This time, I noticed the access panel, the camera angle, the emergency override, the blind spot where the hallway curved toward the boardroom. Habit, or armor. Sometimes they were the same thing. In Elena's office, I sat up on the glass conference table while she placed the sealed folder beside me. Written authorization, she said. Devices, office network, cloud storage, access logs, and coordination with outside counsel. Vivian witnessed it. Good. She also checked the study access log from last night. Owen entered the private wing at 8:09 p.m. I looked up. Elena's eyes held steady. He told the house manager he was looking for the restroom. The powder room is on the west hall. He knows. The day tightened around us. Vivian arrived 15 minutes later with a tablet, 3 printed access reports, and the expression of someone who had not slept enough to be diplomatic. She was in her late 40s, precise, quiet, and sharper than most people would notice on a first pass. She placed the reports in front of Elena and then looked at me. I also brought sandwiches, she said, because CEOs and consultants both become stupid when they pretend coffee is food. Elena closed her eyes for half a second. Vivian. No, Vivian said, you may fire me after you eat. I liked her immediately. For the next 6 hours, the office became a controlled war room. I routed Elena's devices through a hardened connection, imaged her laptop, reviewed VPN activity, and compared the study USB artifact with access attempts from Morgan Logistics' internal network. Vivian built a timeline of Owen's movements using badge entries, calendar records, and witness statements from staff. Elena called outside counsel, not to panic, but to set legal guardrails before anyone touched the board. By noon, Owen made his second mistake. A red alert flashed across my screen while Elena was reviewing the final European root report with Vivian. Unauthorized access attempt. Root directory, Elena Morgan. Origin, internal terminal, 14th floor. Proxy masking, weak. I traced it through 2 relays, then watched the mask peel away. Owen's office terminal. My encrypted phone vibrated beside my laptop. Restricted number. I set the phone on speaker only after activating the recorder and logging the time. Miller, I said. The voice on the other end was smooth enough to be practiced. You are making an unfortunate professional choice. Mr. Miller. Elena froze near the window. Vivian stopped typing. I kept my eyes on the trace. Owen Parker. A pause, small but useful. Elena has always had a weakness for dramatic gestures, he said. Hiring an outside contractor during a sensitive financial period will look very strange to the board. Less strange than a COO accessing a private residence terminal and copying restricted financial files to an unauthorized USB device. You can't prove I copied anything. I have the USB device serial, mount timestamp, transfer artifacts, your study wing access record, and an active access attempt from your office terminal as we speak. The line went quiet. Elena's hand settled on the back of a chair. Her fingers pressed into the leather, but her voice, when she spoke, was calm. Put the phone down. Owen. Another pause. Elena, Owen said, with a warmth so false it made the room colder. You should be careful who you let speak for you. He is not speaking for me, she replied. He is preserving evidence. I looked at her then. She was pale, furious, and steady. Owen exhaled through the line. The board deserves to know about the European losses. The board will receive the complete report, she said, not your stolen excerpt. His tone hardened. You have until the 15th. No, I said, you have until the end of this call to disconnect from her directory. Try again. And outside counsel receives the recording along with the active trace. You're a hired gun. Miller. I'm a witness with logs. The call ended. For 3 seconds, no one moved. Then Vivian picked up one of the sandwiches and set it directly in front of Elena. Eat, she said. Then we bury him properly. Elena stared at the sandwich, then at Vivian, then at me. A tired smile broke through the tension. Is this how all security audits go? She asked. No, I said. Usually the sandwiches are worse. That bought us 7 seconds of relief. We needed them. 2 days later, Owen escalated. The anonymous email hit the executive tier at 4:37 p.m. Subject line: Proof of CEO misconduct. Vivian opened it first and came into the secure conference room without knocking, which told me the situation had crossed from urgent to dangerous. "Elena," she said, "it went to 7 board members and 3 senior investors." She handed over the tablet. Elena tapped the attachment. The video began in her private study on the night of the party. The angle came from the phone hidden behind the legal books. It showed her standing by the desk, staring at the threatening message. Then it showed me entering, closing the door, and moving toward her terminal. The audio had been stripped and replaced with captions. CEO Morgan caught in secret meeting with external contractor to manipulate Q4 financial data before board review. The room was silent, except for the heating system and the tiny hiss of sleet against the window. Elena placed the tablet face down on the table, carefully, too carefully. "He filmed us finding the breach," she said. "He filmed the setup." I corrected. Her jaw tightened. "The board won't see the difference if he pushes them hard enough." "Then we show them before he does." I picked up the tablet and replayed the raw file, not the edited version attached to the email. We had already extracted the original from the hidden phone, but until that moment, I had not found the missing piece that would make the board understand in one look. Frame by frame, the study appeared again. Monitor glow. Elena by the desk. The window behind her, black with night. I stopped the video at 14 seconds. There, faint in the dark glass, was the hallway outside the study door. A reflection, distorted, narrow, but visible. A man stood by the frame, one hand near the shelf, silver watch, navy sleeve. Elena leaned closer. "Owen," she whispered. Vivian's mouth became a thin line. He wore that watch at the party. He kept tapping it during dinner. He planted the phone, started recording, and stepped into the hallway before Elena entered. I said, "The reflection places him at the scene. The phone metadata gives us creation time. The terminal logs give us the data extraction time. Vivian's access report puts him in the private wing minutes before both." Elena drew a slow breath. It shook once on the way in, then steadied on the way out. For a moment, she was not the CEO. She was a woman watching betrayal become undeniable. I kept my hands on the edge of the table and did not move closer. "Elena," I said, "you decide how far this goes today. We can prepare the evidence for outside counsel and call for a controlled board review, or we can wait and let Owen force the room on his terms." Her eyes lifted to mine. "You're asking, not telling. It's your company." The sleet tapped harder against the glass. She turned to Vivian. "Call Richard Vance. Emergency board session tomorrow morning. Mandatory attendance. No remote dial-ins unless counsel approves. No documents leave this floor tonight." Vivian nodded, already drafting. Then Elena looked back at me. "Prepare everything." I already started. This time, her smile held for a full second. The boardroom the next morning felt less like a meeting space and more like a courtroom built by people who preferred leather chairs to witness stands. 10 board members sat around the long, polished table. Outside counsel occupied 2 seats near the far wall. Vivian stood beside a document cart with sealed evidence packets organized in clean rows. Owen Parker sat 3 chairs down from the head, immaculate in a navy suit, silver watch bright at his wrist. Elena took the head seat. I stood near the projector with my laptop hardwired into the display. No wireless, no remote access, no surprises. Chairman Richard Vance looked from Elena to me, then to the sealed folders in front of him. "Elena," he said, "we received a deeply concerning communication regarding your handling of Q4 financial data." "I know," she said. "That communication was part of an internal sabotage attempt." Owen gave a short laugh. "That is an extraordinary accusation." Elena did not look at him. "It is," she said. "That is why I'm letting the evidence speak first." She nodded to me. I pressed the first key. A timeline appeared on the screen. Clean, simple, impossible to misunderstand. 8:09 p.m. Owen Parker accesses private East Wing. 8:14 p.m. USB device mounted on Elena Morgan's private study terminal. 8:16 p.m. Q4 restructuring files copied. 8:22 p.m. USB device removed. 8:27 p.m. Elena Morgan discovers terminal message. 8:31 p.m. Julian Miller enters study after written authorization. I turned toward the board. "This is not an interpretation," I said. "These are system artifacts, access records, and preserved device logs verified by outside counsel's technical reviewer." Owen leaned back. "Or a contractor's reconstruction." Vivian stepped forward and placed a sealed folder in front of Chairman Vance. "That is the residence access report," she said, "pulled from the estate system before Mr. Miller was granted administrative review." Owen's eyes cut toward her. Vivian did not blink. I moved to the next slide. The threatening message appeared: "Resign by the 15th, or the board sees the real numbers." Several directors shifted in their chairs. Elena remained still. I showed the transfer log next. Then the internal access attempt from Owen's office terminal. Then the transcript excerpt from his call, reviewed and marked by counsel. When Owen stood, his chair scraped loudly against the floor. "This is theater," he said. "The real issue is Elena hiding losses from this board. She brought this man into her private study during a party, behind closed doors, and now expects you to accept his version of events." His voice rose with every word. That was good. Anger makes people sloppy. "Let's discuss the video," I said. The projector changed. The anonymous clip played first, captions and all. Then I played the preserved RAW file, no captions. Original metadata visible beside it. I froze the frame at 14 seconds and zoomed into the dark window. A murmur passed around the boardroom. The reflection sharpened enough to show a man in the hallway, one hand near the study shelf, the silver watch catching a small line of light. I did not say Owen's name. I did not need to. Chairman Vance looked slowly from the screen to Owen's wrist. Owen lowered his hand too late. "This frame," I said, "places the person who planted the recording device outside the study at the time of setup. The phone's creation timestamp aligns with the terminal breach. The residence access log places Mr. Parker in the private wing. The later internal access attempt came from his office terminal. The same stolen file set appears in the anonymous email package." Owen's face darkened. "You have no authority here." Elena stood. The room obeyed the movement. "Julian Miller was authorized in writing to preserve evidence after I discovered an active breach," she said. Vivian witnessed that authorization. Outside counsel reviewed the process. And while Mr. Parker has spent the last 48 hours trying to turn a theft into a confidence vote, my team has completed the report he tried to bury. She looked at me. I switched slides. The European restructuring report filled the screen. Not raw panic numbers. Context, roots, recovery projections, contract timelines, temporary losses tied to long-term gains. Every figure Owen had tried to weaponize sat inside the explanation that made it survivable. Elena stepped away from her chair and faced the board directly. "The European expansion is not failing," she said. "It is between phases. The raw ledger was isolated because releasing it without the accompanying root correction would trigger unnecessary investor fear. The final model shows recovery inside 2 quarters and profit expansion by the 3rd. You were always scheduled to receive this today." She turned then, finally, toward Owen. "What you were not scheduled to receive was stolen data, a planted camera, and an edited video designed to force my resignation before I could speak." No one moved. Chairman Vance closed the folder in front of him. The sound was soft, final. "Mr. Parker," he said, "you will leave this room now with security. Your access is suspended pending legal review." Owen looked around the table, searching for one friendly face. He found polished wood, closed folders, and silence. Security escorted him out before the hour ended. By noon, his badges were dead. His office was sealed. Outside counsel had the complaint package prepared for submission. The board voted unanimously to continue Elena's restructuring plan and authorized an independent review of executive access protocols. It was not dramatic in the way movies like to make justice dramatic. No shouting in the lobby, no confession, no applause. Just a series of doors closing properly. That felt better. The following weeks did not turn into a victory montage. Real recovery never moves that cleanly. There were investor calls, system rebuilds, legal reviews, and long evenings where the executive floor emptied except for Elena, Vivian, and me, working under the soft glow of desk lamps. My senior technicians rotated through server audits. Vivian built new approval workflows that made half the executive team groan and all of them safer. Nathan resurfaced twice, once to bring dinner and once to tell me that if I turned his aunt's office into a bunker with better coffee, he expected naming rights. Elena told him to leave the food and go bother someone his own age. He grinned at me on the way out. She likes you. That means she'll pretend she doesn't for at least 3 more weeks. Elena threw a paperclip at him. It missed. Barely. Those moments did more for the room than any security patch I installed. The coffee became a quiet ritual. At first, Elena handed it to me because caffeine kept the work moving. Then one morning, the cup arrived with a lid marked in her handwriting. Not punishment, just coffee. I kept the lid. I did not tell her. Boundaries mattered, especially then. She was still my client. The company was still exposed. Owen's lawyers were still circling the edges of the case, looking for weak seams. So I did what I had done from the beginning. I stayed useful. I stayed careful. I never took more space than she offered. But there were moments. A late-night audit where her shoulder nearly brushed mine as we reviewed access changes, and she quietly moved the mouse closer so I would not have to lean in. A board follow-up where one director questioned whether an outside contractor had overstepped, and Elena answered before I could. Mr. Miller preserved evidence when my internal chain of command was compromised, she said. That is not overreach. That is the reason we still have a company to discuss. She did not look at me when she said it. That somehow made it land harder. 6 weeks after the party, the final report closed. Owen signed a severance agreement with strict non-disclosure and non-compete terms, while the cyber complaint remained ready if he violated either. Morgan Logistics completed its first corrected European route without disruption. Vivian's new access structure passed external review. Nathan sent a text consisting only of a trophy emoji, a lock emoji, and a coffee emoji. I packed my equipment in Elena's office just after sunset. The winter light was softer than it had been the morning after the party, gold instead of gray. It stretched across the glass table, the chairs, the now empty wall port where my blue cable had lived for more than a month. My Pelican case sat open on the floor, drives in foam slots, gloves sealed, cables wrapped and tied. Order restored. Elena stood near the window, sleeves rolled to her elbows, no boardroom armor left in her posture. She looked tired, but not cornered. The difference was everything. Vivian says the remote sweep schedule is excessive, she said. Vivian thinks breathing without a calendar invite is reckless. She also said you would say that. I closed the case and latched it. The sound echoed once. Well? I said. Then she remains dangerously competent. Elena turned from the window. The office was quiet enough that I could hear the faint buzz of the city below the glass. You're leaving, she said. The contract is closed. I know. No music played now. No string quartet. No party noise. No hidden camera in the shelf behind her. Just the soft hum of a secure office and the small space between two people who had spent 6 weeks pretending distance was only professional. I lifted the case. You have my direct line if anything unusual shows up. I know that too. I nodded once and turned toward the door. My hand reached the handle before she said my name. Julian. I stopped. When I turned, she was walking toward me with something small in her hand. A brass key, old-fashioned, solid, polished smooth at the edges. She stopped close enough to place it in my palm, but not so close that either of us could mistake the choice. Her fingers touched my hand for one careful second, then released. "This is for the private executive elevator," she said. "It bypasses the lobby desk and comes directly to this floor." I looked down at the key, then back at her. "Elena, the access protocols are rebuilt. You don't need an unlogged bypass route anymore." "I know." Her voice stayed even, but her eyes were warmer than the office lights. "That's why Vivian logged this one properly, despite myself." I smiled. She continued before I could answer. "The contract is over. You're not my security consultant tonight. And I have a dinner reservation at 8 at a quiet restaurant where no one will discuss proxy servers, board votes, or USB device artifacts." The key rested cold in my palm. Cold, then warming. Through the window behind her, the city lights blurred against the dark. For a second, I remembered the first night at the estate. Pine in the air, music below us. A door that should have been locked standing open. Now the door in front of me was open for an entirely different reason. "Does Nathan know?" I asked. Her expression softened into something almost playful. He guessed. My phone buzzed. I looked down. "If you're about to take my aunt to dinner, don't be weird. Also, wear a better tie." Elena read my face. "Nathan? He has concerns about my tie." He's right. I glanced at the brass key, then at the woman who had walked through Betrayal without letting it make her cruel. "I'll be here at 7:30, I said. "No security sweep first?" One visual check of the exit routes. She folded her arms, but the smile reached her eyes. "One? And I reserve the right to judge the restaurant's camera placement." "That sounds romantic." "It's my best material." She laughed then. Not the small lobby laugh. Not the exhausted, almost smile from the study. A real laugh. Warm enough to loosen something in my chest that had been tight for years. I closed my fingers around the key. The company was safe. The evidence was sealed. The job was done. For once, walking out did not feel like retreating behind a wall. It felt like coming back through the right door. The end.